Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the Most Accurate Podcast. I am your host, Addison Hayes, joined, as always, by one of the most accurate rankers in the entire fantasy community, John Paulson. John, how are we doing this week for Thursday morning?
I'm doing all right. This is turning into my favorite day of the week because I get to talk sneaky starts, and everybody knows that I'm passionate about my sneaky starts.
That's right. That's right. You are. And we are just moving so quickly through this season. I was like, we're already week 4. It's like 25% of the way through the year. Time is flying. And we just continue to churn out these sneaky starts. We had a few really good hits last week. And hopefully we can continue to deliver that this week. So for those of you, in case if you don't know, we each have one player at all 4 positions for a total of 8 players that we consider to be sneaky starts. And they may not be, they're not like super deep names. Maybe some of them are, but not all of them are always super deep names. But it's just guys that can really over exceed expectations on the week that you should be really considering to throw into your starting lineup. So we can start at the quarterback position. John, do you want to give us your quarterback sneaky start for week 4?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Jordan Love at Dallas. They're 32nd in adjusted fantasy points allowed to the quarterback position. And this week we are now dealing with 2025 data in our adjusted fantasy points allowed metrics, hotspots metrics. So everything is now updated for 2025 defenses because we now have 3 weeks of data to work with. And last in the league right now in adjusted fantasy points allowed to quarterbacks are the Cowboys. And I think they'll bounce back, the Packers, after a kind of a miserable offensive showing against a tough, stingy Cleveland defense where they didn't really throw the ball enough. They still averaged 7.2 or 7.3 yards per attempt, and they just kept trying to run the ball, even though they're only averaging like 2.7 yards per carry. But the Cowboys, 300 yards allowed, 2.33 touchdowns allowed to enemy passers, an additional 32 yards rushing, and 0.67 rushing touchdowns given up to quarterbacks on the ground. That's roughly 28 fantasy points per game, which would be a pretty good showing, I think, for Jordan Love. At least 24 given up to the quarterback position in all 3 games. I just think that this is going to be a bounce back game for this offense, and Jordan Love should take advantage.
You would hope that Matthew Golden now understands where the sidelines are. So the next time he catches a long bomb touchdown on the sideline, he can finish out the play for a 90-yard touchdown. And that would certainly help Jordan Love.
I've seen people criticize him for that play. He probably could have stayed in a bit longer, but his momentum was taking him toward the sideline. I saw somebody on Instagram suggesting that it was because of Vegas action. And I was like, this is just irresponsible use of your Instagram.
The play that I saw that was Vegas action was one of the Jordan Love sacks where he like rolled out right, and then he like pump faked it a couple times or like tried to throw it, and then he just ended up taking a sack. And they're just like, yeah, that's clearly some shenanigans going on. Not like all the other games are rigged necessarily. At least that game gave us one of my favorite sound clips, which was Myles Garrett breaking through the line, and then your tackle shouted, "Jordan, run!" So that was a fantastic clip.
Yeah, the offensive line isn't playing great right now. We'll see how that they can turn that around against the Cowboys. Typically a good unit.
I expect a really good game from Jordan Love this week, so I fully endorse this. My quarterback start of the week, I'm looking at the 31st team defense in adjusted fantasy points against the quarterback position with the Chicago Bears. So I'm wanting to start Geno Smith this week at home against the Bears defense that, yes, they held Dak in check last week. I do wonder how much of that was due to the immediate CeeDee Lamb injury and had Lamb actually played that full entire game, if Dak's numbers would have been a lot better. I would like to believe so. But other than that, they gave up a top 12 performance to JJ McCarthy. They gave up a QB1 overall performance to Jared Goff in week 2. Geno Smith himself, he's been a top 15 fantasy quarterback in 2 out of 3 games. He had 360 yards and a touchdown in week 1, 289 and 3 touchdowns last week. So I expect in a home matchup, this game might get like a sneaky kind of high scoring game if Chicago's offense is able to continue doing what they're doing. And then Vegas kind of has to throw to keep up against a pretty bad pass defense. So I expect Geno to be in contention for a QB1 performance this week against Chicago.
I agree. And actually, I'm not going to spoil anything, but 3 out of your 4 sneaky starts this week, I did also write up in my article. So if you would like sneaky starts, make sure you check out the article. The Bears, 256 yards, 2.7 passing touchdowns allowed, with another third of a touchdown allowed on the ground for 3 total touchdowns allowed to the position. It's a good spot for Geno. I'm going to start him in 1 league.
Let's move on to the tight end position. I could not be more excited about your sneaky start because he has been a dude of mine since he was coming out of the draft and stuff. And I'm a massive fan. So why don't you endorse one of my favorite players in the draft classes here?
Yeah, I was looking at my list this week of who I wrote up, and I could discuss Hunter Henry, who I wrote up last week and turned in the tight end 1 overall numbers. So I think that was a little bit too obvious. Dalton Kincaid is on a good run as well. And then the Browns tight ends are also playable this week, but why not go to the Chargers and pray? Cause, Connor and I in our FFPC league, we picked him up. We're sitting without George Kittle right now, trying to manage our tight end position. Oronde Gadsden. Is that how you pronounce that? Gadsden. Yep. Do I have to say it like that? Okay. So he, was a healthy scratch the first 2 weeks. I'm hoping that doesn't happen again if Will Dissly is back, but Will Dissly was out last week. Connor and I, of course, picked up Tyler Conklin, thinking that Tyler Conklin would, get the action that Will Dissly was getting and, run most of the routes at tight end position. But it was the rookie Gadsden who was suddenly active and suddenly very active on the field. Caught 5 of 7 targets for 46 yards, caught 2 passes on the game-winning drive. So clearly Justin Herbert trusts him to get open. And this is a deeper play. This is if you're really in trouble, which Connor and I are in that FPC league. If you're in trouble, roll them out there at the tight end position because, the Giants are sort of middle of the pack. And quote from Justin Herbert after game, we're looking for a big year for him. So hopefully no longer inactive and very active in the passing game.
I'm just so excited that everybody else is getting on board with Oronde Gadsden because speaking from the dynasty side of things from rookie draft season and analyzing all these prospects, he popped out super hard in my personal model and evaluation. So I have a lot of him, and I know a lot of people who listen to my advice on the DLF channel also have him as well, and they're super excited based on what he did last week. So I'm just hoping that it continues. Because I truly think that he is the best tight end on that roster. And he finally got a chance to show that last week. And I just really want that to continue going on because he can be so freaking good. My tight end sneaky start, you mentioned that you had highlighted Hunter Henry last week. They were facing the Pittsburgh Steelers pass defense. And that turned out to be phenomenal. So I am also going to target the Pittsburgh Steelers defense this week with TJ Hockenson. That game is the early Sunday morning Ireland game. So there isn't really a home advantage to either one of the teams. But I do think that, going up against the Steelers defense, that TJ Hockenson, who has kind of let you down for a couple of weeks, but seemed to kind of get back on track last week with Carson Wentz, had 5 catches for 49 yards and a touchdown, that I think Hockenson can be a really good start this week. Even though Jordan Addison is back from suspension, what is he going to look like in the first week back? What's he going to look like with Carson Wentz? I don't even know if he has any rapport with Carson Wentz. If based on when Wentz joined the team and when Addison's suspension was hit, I don't know if they have really much practice time at all. So I am confident in TJ Hockenson this week. And again, personally, as a Steelers fan myself, I've watched for years and years and years, and it just continues to happen that the Steelers cannot cover anybody over the middle of the field, especially when they're matched up against linebackers. We saw that last week with Hunter Henry. Every single time I looked up at the TV, Hunter Henry was catching another pass, and I think TJ Hockenson can do some serious damage this week.
I agree. Season high 6 targets last week in Wentz's first start. Not only did the Steelers give up 8 for 90 and 2 touchdowns to Hunter Henry, but they gave up 4 for 57 and a touchdown to the combination of A.J. Barner and Elijah Arroyo the week before. So they've been struggling against the tight end position.
They always do, or at least over the middle. It's awful to watch. Running backs, John, your sneaky start at the running back position for week 4.
Yeah, this will fall under the category of, he's not so sneaky. James Conner just got injured, obviously. Trey Benson is going to step in and be the man. But I always go back to my fireman buddy who sometimes isn't paying attention to the fantasy landscape and whether or not he would know to start Trey Benson this week. And he might not. Now he would if he listens to this live stream. The attrition play that we we're waiting on, or this is why you draft a Benson. This is why you draft Jordan Mason last week. You get him in a huge game against the Bengals. So Benson against the Seahawks. This is tonight. This game, right? Thursday night football. Benson saw 13 touches last week. Some of those after the Conner injury, but Conner handled 12 touches before the injury. So combined, it's 25 touches between the two of them. Amari DiMercado is now the RB2 there. He had just 2 touches. I think he had a fumble or bobbled touch. Seattle has not allowed a touchdown yet to a running back. However, so they're not showing up really popping as a great matchup in terms of the adjusted fantasy points allowed to running backs. But they have allowed 158 total yards to the position on average. So this is a good spot for Benson. You could look at his rushing lines as well if you play the pick'em games, because I think they might be a little low. He should see the vast majority of those touches out of that backfield.
He's looked really good. He had phenomenal usage whenever James Conner went out, and I don't expect that game plan to necessarily change because, like you said, it's Amari DiMercado and Bam Knight behind him. So there really isn't much competition. So very similar to your call with Jordan Mason last week. Once Aaron Jones was kind of out of the picture, Trey Benson can do very similar things, especially if he is catching, 2, 3, 4 passes. I think he had 3 receptions last week, and Conner also had 3 receptions last week before he got hurt. So there's a solid piece of the pie there in the receiving game for Trey Benson to get into, especially if the Arizona Cardinals offense is passing a little bit. Their passing rate has been really high. I think they're top 5 in the league. So if that's only better for Trey Benson for floor and ceiling as well.
Trey Benson 5.0 yards per carry so far in his career. So let's see if that keeps up.
My running back sneaky start this week is Nick Chubb against the Tennessee Titans. Nick Chubb hasn't necessarily been phenomenal this year, but I think that when you look at his game log, that is more of a product of just overall volume. Not so much Nick Chubb himself. Efficiency-wise, he's been over 4 yards per carry in 2 out of 3 games. He's over 4 yards per carry on the season, but he hasn't had more than 13 carries in a single game, and he only has maybe a target or 2. That's just kind of Nick Chubb's game. He's not getting the receptions, especially with Woody Marks' kind of surge over the last week or 2. But against the Tennessee Titans, they've been absolutely awful against the run. They allowed 120 combined yards to Dobbins and Harvey in week 1. 110 yards to Kyron and Corum in week 2, and then they allowed over 100 yards individually to Jonathan Taylor last week, including 3 touchdowns, which Jonathan Taylor does that to everybody this year, it seems. So, but the other matchups, I like to see that they're giving up a lot of yardage to basically everybody that they face. So I'm hopeful. This Houston Texans offense has been really stale and has not been great at all. But against a Titans defense that is more porous and susceptible to the run and to the pass than the other defenses that they faced so far, that Nick Chubb could have his best game of the year. If he gets, 60 yards and then actually scores, I think that's a very solid day, especially if you are somebody who just lost James Conner. Maybe you drafted a rookie and they aren't doing anything. Maybe you lost Aaron Jones and you haven't had a good backup, or lost Tyron Tracy and you don't have a good backup. Like, there's a lot of injuries and a lot of other situations right now where Nick Chubb could be that sneaky player off your bench who could deliver a solid top 25 week this week.
The Titans have given up the 3rd most rushing yards to running backs, and the tied with who I don't know who they're tied with, because the 5 rushing touchdowns have been allowed by the Titans as well, so that they lead the league in that metric as well. So it is a good matchup for Nick Chubb. He might pop.
Final position at the wide receiver spot. John, do you want to hit us with your sneaky start for the week?
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and go back to the Packer Cowboys game, and I'm trying to speak this one into existence. I think with Matthew Golden, very close to a long touchdown last week, game winner maybe if he had stayed in bounds. But they're starting to get him involved. He was targeted early and often by Jordan Love in that game. 3 of his first 5 pass attempts, Love targeted Golden, so they were coming out and trying to establish him. He went on to lead the team in yards, 52, and he had a 34-yard grab where he could have perhaps stayed in bounds or gotten up the field a bit further. But with his 4.29 speed at Jerry World, I think there's bound to be at least one bomb headed in his direction, and the matchup is obviously very ripe. I mentioned the quarterback numbers against Dallas. Against receivers, they've averaged 13 catches allowed for 220 yards and 2 touchdowns per game, including 6 scores and 3 100-yard performances over the last 2 weeks. So this is about as good as it gets in terms of matchup, and the Packers need Golden to get going.
Yeah, it's one of those, like, if you're not playing Matthew Golden in this matchup, when are you ever going to play Matthew Golden this year? Especially with Jaden Reed out. Jordan Love and Matthew Golden have missed on just like a couple of plays here and there throughout the year. And even last week felt like there was, meat still left on the bone. So if they can capitalize on that against a terrible defense, man, he could have a really strong performance. And like you said, you're kind of trying to speak it into existence for it to happen. But I'm on board with it. My wide receiver sneaky start this week is Sterling Shepard, who draws a home matchup against the Philadelphia Eagles. So far through the year, even as the wide receiver 3 behind Evans and Ibuka, Shepard has still been a pretty solid producer. He's seen 4+ targets all 3 weeks. And then last week had 4 receptions for 80 yards in the game where Mike Evans left early with his hamstring injury. So now Mike Evans is out this week. Shepard goes into that wide receiver 2 role behind Emeka Ibuka. And the matchup doesn't look necessarily stellar. It's not like we're like attacking the Philadelphia Eagles defense with our receivers or quarterbacks, but the Buccaneers offense is good enough even without Mike Evans. Baker proved that last year, that they could still be a very productive offense and push this Eagles secondary. They've also been beaten by CeeDee Lamb. They got beat by Puka and Devontae Adams last week. And Adams' game could have been even better if he connected with Stafford on a couple extra throws that Stafford just missed on. So I think as the wide receiver 2, with the production that he's already had as the wide receiver 3, I think he's a solid flex option or a wide receiver 3 if you're in a start 3 wide receiver league.
Yeah, I wrote him up as well, along with Chris Godwin, who might be back this week. So if Godwin is back, I don't think that necessarily throws a wrench into this play, because they're probably going to limit Godwin in terms of how many snaps he can actually run in his first game back. And, Shepard's going to be out there for the majority of the pass plays. The funny thing about Shepard is that you're probably not going to get a touchdown out of him, but he is a good PPR play or point per first down play, because he's going to catch several passes in this one, I would think. His last touchdown came in week 5 of last year against Atlanta. But then, this year, at least 3 catches in every game, at least 34 yards in every game, and then 4 for 80 last week. He's been involved.
Chris Godwin did practice in full today on Thursday. So I'm curious if that's going to be more indicative of him actually playing this week, because he practiced last week too, all limited practices last week. But today, I believe, was his first full practice, any full practice yesterday on Wednesday too. So I am wondering maybe if he is going to be back this week. I was kind of thinking he was going to be back next week in week 5, but I do agree. Even if Godwin's still out there, I think Shepard is a fine PPR kind of play as a wide receiver 3. So those are our 8 sneaky starts, 2 at every single position for the week 4 Sunday slate. We're going to move in now to a Bleacher Nation fantasy card. Bleacher Nation, if you're unfamiliar, is we have a new game on there where it's a pick'em game, kind of similar to Prize Picks or Underdogs, where you just pick more or less on all lines of every single player for passing yards, touchdowns, all that kind of stuff. So as of right now, if you are interested in signing up, you can get a 50% deposit match for up to $100, meaning that you can deposit $200 and you'll get the full $100 back for the deposit match in bonus cash to also play with. And we run promotions pretty much every single like day of solo games. So like Thursday night, Sunday night, Monday night. I believe this week we're also running a college football promotion. So there's a lot of promotions. It's one of the most aggressive platforms for promos to get on there and play and win some money. So we got a 3-leg card this week with a promo on Sunday night. That is Dak Prescott less than 8.5 interceptions, which means he has to throw 9 interceptions, which would break the single game interception record in the NFL. So if he throws less than 8.5 interceptions, that is our promo for this week for the Sunday night game. Paulson, do you know who has the record with who threw 8 interceptions to set that record?
I know it's a Chicago quarterback. That's all I know.
It was a Chicago Cardinal quarterback back in 1950. Jim Hardy threw 8 interceptions in one game against the Philadelphia Eagles. So on September 24th. So that might have been like this week of games as well. Very interesting.
Jim Hardy had quite the leash.
Apparently he did. Yeah. Which is even more crazy considering it was in 1950 that, they didn't throw back then like that. But apparently he threw enough to throw in 8 interceptions. Ryan Fitzpatrick threw 6 in 2016, by the way, with the New York Jets. So that was like the most recent high interception game. Of course, it's Ryan Fitzpatrick. Anyway, so first leg, Dak Prescott less than 8.5 interceptions is the promo for the Sunday night game. John, do you want to hit us with our second leg for this week's card?
Yeah, I'm kind of, as a Packer fan, hoping that he does get to 8. Like, I think that would be pretty funny. Doesn't get to 9 interceptions, but does throw 8. Yeah, I actually thought about I actually had it in there. I don't know if you saw that, Addison, but I had the Jordan Love over, or I should say more than 237 rush and pass yards. And then I took that out because I was being too Packer-centric in this podcast. And I'm going with J.K. Dobbins, more than 57.5 rushing yards. He has gone over this in 3 straight games. He is the RB1 in Denver right now. Would have been a great pick in some of my teams in the middle rounds, but I was a little scared of R.J. Harvey, apparently. Do not have any Dobbins this year. He's running well. Cincinnati allowed 116 yards to Jordan Mason last week, and then 71 yards the week before to Travis Etienne. They've allowed the 6th most rushing yards to running backs thus far. And this is a game where, you would think the Broncos can control this game and get Dobbins plenty of work, and he should clear this number fairly easily if he gets the requisite number of carries.
Yeah, J.K. Dobbins has been a major winner so far as a late-round drafter for fantasy, and I think that that's just going to continue this week against a really bad Bengals defense and bad Bengals offense that's going to lead Denver to have to run probably even more, just like Jordan Mason last week. By the way, I did notice that you started with that Jordan Love leg, so I also like that one as well. So if people wanted to throw that in there, we would get a 4-leg card out of this, and you can 10x your payout on that one if you wanted to throw Jordan Love in there and tail Paulson on that call. But
I like the combined rush and pass because it's only like 5 yards more than the pass. And when he's healthy, he's usually rushing for 10 to 12 yards. So you're getting a little bit of a cushion there. And maybe if there's he throws for 230, you don't end up losing because you get you get a 10-yard run.
My leg for this card then is going to be Alec Iomanner, more than 33.5 receiving yards. Autocorrect when I typed this out actually autocorrected me to Epic Iomanner. So maybe that's indicative of the production that he's had or will have moving forward. But more than 33.5 receiving yards. He's been over this total each of the past 2 weeks, basically after his didn't do much in week one. He's a rookie, but then the last 2 weeks he's gotten more involved in the offense. Some would even say he's more of the wide receiver one for Tennessee in Cam Ward right now. So he's been over this total the last 2 games. Now draws a Texans defense that has allowed 7 wide receivers so far in 3 weeks to go over 35 receiving yards. And that is especially even more so if Derek Stingley, who missed practice on Wednesday with an oblique injury. I didn't see any updates for Thursday practices yet. But if Derek Stingley is also out, then that makes this Texans secondary that much weaker for Alec to get over this 33.5 receiving yardage total.
I've been saying Ao Manor, but it's how do you pronounce it?
I say Io Manor. I think I started with Ao Manor or Ao Manor, but then it was like Io Manor. I don't know. There's like 17 different ways I think that you could say this one, and I don't think any of them are necessarily wrong.
I don't know which
one's
right.
It
I thought maybe you know you're in the Dynasty Street, so I figure you've been saying this name longer. But
I originally didn't know how to say it at all either, to the point where I just didn't even say it. I would just call him Alec, which I think is appropriate if he's the only Alec in the NFL. So if you just say Alec, it's like Lamar or, that's his name. Are you trying to look up to see how you say it?
I am. I can't hear the pronunciation, so we'll get back to you on that.
So those are our 3 official legs is the Dak Prescott less than 8.5 interceptions promo, the J.K. Dobbins more than 57.5 rushing yards, and Alec Io Manor more than 33.5 receiving yards. If you wanted to also throw in Paulson's Jordan Love passing and rushing yardage total, you could throw that one in there for a 4-legger. That would 10x your payout, but this 3-leg without Jordan Love in there would 6x your payout on the new Bleacher Nation fantasy app that, as I mentioned, you can sign up and get a 50% deposit match up to $100. So sign up and play on the Google Play or iOS App Store. But that'll do it for the Week 4 sneaky starts with all of our players in our Bleacher Nation fantasy card. Hopefully we get you guys some really good calls as we have over the past few weeks, and you guys can win your matchup this week. So we appreciate you guys for listening and tuning in. Please hit that like and subscribe button, whether you're on YouTube or Spotify or Apple Podcasts or anywhere that you listen to this podcast. We greatly appreciate that support. We will catch you guys next week for Week 5 sneaky starts on the Most Accurate Podcast.